Wear your heart on your sleeve. Welcome back to Hoys FM, where we wear our hearts on our sleeves, where the opinion is real and straight from the heart. Today we're going to be discussing US and South Africa relations. And this relationship, I don't even know what to call it necessarily, but I genuinely do feel that South Africa is, if not the first, one of America's unofficial colonies. I think America is our colonial master. We hide behind the fact that we were actually colonized by Britain, and then Britain got into a partnership with the local white population in South Africa called Afrikaners, and that then led to the formation of apartheid. However, that apartheid government having some kind of stability, and the fact that it took protests both in London but also a lot of activity in the United States, it's also telling that a lot of the discussions in terms of which parliament or which government was discussing what to do about the ending of apartheid. Joe Biden was very influential in the cause, and so that kind of speaks to this idea that South Africa is a colony of the United States. Wear your heart on your sleeve. Let's listen to Rob Hertzhoff in his own words.
And kiss the ring with Donald Trump, and he's got this week to do it.
And if he doesn't kiss the ring, what's the consequences for, well, us in South Africa?
Solid tomorrow. So my recommendation to the Trump administration is to bless the Western Cape, bless the Democratic Alliance, and curse the ANC, BFF, and MK. You know, the Zondo Commission, nothing happened. Zondo Commission, there were 2,348 names mentioned, okay? All with a little line against them, what criminal activity they had pursued, allegedly pursued, but obviously we know most of that's true. Those are the people, the big ones, that should be sanctioned. They should be put on the Magnitsky list, they should have asset freezers, they should be on the SDM list. Pick the individuals in the ANC, including people like the Lady Pandal, which resigned from their position, who's a full-on Islamist. Pick those people and nail them, put sanctions on them, and then back the DA, back the Western Cape, back DA-run areas, and have tariffs on the rest of South Africa. Bring the pain. We're not going to change things in South Africa unless Cyril and his gangsters realize that America and the West have had enough of their lies. They lie to that internationally, and then they institute racist, socialist policies in South Africa. That needs to end.
So there could be an upside here for parts of South Africa, at least in your way of seeing it.
Yeah, I've been saying, make immediately appoint a special envoy to South Africa and America that is to protect minorities. Okay, all minorities, ethnic and cultural. Move the American embassy from Pretoria to Cape Town. Work with the DA, not the GNU. Work with the DA and other like-minded people and business people who've been standing up, supporting America, supporting the West, putting South Africa first, not the ANC first, and find your ambassadors, business, political, civic society like Free Market Foundation, AfriForum, South and back those organizations and those people heavily as America, and punish the people that have been imposing racist and socialist policies on South Africa.
Makes a lot of sense, Rob, but what are the chances of it happening?
Higher than 50%.
How so?
Let's talk about one other thing, if I may.
Just before you do that, we'll get to that in a moment, but why do you think it's higher than 50%? What's your... Because you don't just say things, you often know things and then share with us what comes through the conclusion there. Why would it be higher than 50%?
So the podcast interviews I give, like on Business or on Truth Report, or the articles I write, don't come out of my vivid imagination. They come out of conversations with people that matter. So I have my relationships within the GNU government, within South African politics, and I know the ones I can trust. They also know that what they tell me, I will say on a podcast, I will say online. So they know, they're careful about what they give me, but often they give me what I need to tell the truth online. And the same applies in America. So I had a lot of conversations yesterday, and I'm going to meet a lot of important people in Washington, and those people have told me what is going on behind the scenes. I know what information the Americans do have, but I'm not entirely sure what decision they're going to make on the back of that information.
Yeah, it's quite clear that they know everything. There's nothing that Ramaphosa can go and tell him that they don't already know. In fact, they probably know more than him, given his Blue Light Brigade detachment from what's really happening in South Africa, and the fact that the ANC does not pay attention to the polls that they don't agree with, and the information, the research that we've seen that from Social Research Foundation, the IRR, as an example. But my question really is, when all of this is over tomorrow, and whether Cyril gets publicly humiliated as a la Zelensky, or whether it's just short shrift, what does it mean for South Africa after that, given all the insights that you have, that the relationships that you have, that the context that you have? What can we look forward to as either an upside or a downside of this whole exercise?
So the upside is that Cyril learns his lesson, takes the message very clearly, realizes he doesn't have any allies left externally, and Russia and China are not going to ride to his rescue. Their relationship with America, and what they have on their priority list is way more important than Cyril and his merry morons of the ANC. Iran is being put into a box very, very quickly. I mean, in the Chagos Islands, right now, America has half its fleet of stealth, I don't know what their designation is, and half the stealth bombers are sitting in the Chagos Islands. They can reach Iran, and they can put Iran back to 5 centuries ago in a matter of 3 or 4 bombing strikes. Israel's dying to do it, and America's holding them back. Iran will be put into the dark ages of their behave, and they are in deep discussions now with Steve Westcott, the American team, about removing their nuclear capability and never having the ability to have nuclear weapons. Iran is not going to worry about the ANC. They've done their bit. They've turned part of the ANC into an Islamist front, an Islamist proxy, and Durko is the result of it. But Iran is not going to rise to the rescue. They've got way bigger problems. The ANC has no more allies. Okay, so it's just internal. And you've got the crazies of MK and EFF who want to get rid of Cyril. And you have the ANC disintegrating internally. So the good news is, Cyril is going to have to take America seriously. What Donald Trump wants, Cyril cannot be the hero and will not be the hero, try and increase his stature, tiny though it is, to push back on America. That will be the most destructive behavior for South Africa. And it's irrelevant what Lamola and John Steele and they're just there, there's nodding dogs in the back of a car, trying to put forth the excuses that there is no genocide, there are no farm attacks. It's not going to work. The downside is that, Donald Trump just says, I've had enough, and puts punitive tariffs on South Africa as a whole, and all of us will suffer terribly. So I'm hoping there's a middle ground that he'll pick individuals, including Cyril, by the way, and take away Cyril's McDonald's franchises. That there'll be punishments on the bad guys, but give South Africa as a whole an opportunity to still, thrive within the madness that we are currently living.
And so as Donald Trump is about to meet Cyril Ramaphosa, what is going to happen there is going to have a reverb, not just for the country, but the continent as a whole. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Africa is going to then respond to any disrespect that is going to be passed on to Cyril Ramaphosa, because whatever contempt is expressed for Cyril, whatever contempt is expressed for South Africa, is contempt towards anyone and everyone in the black world. And I think with that context, and I expect that Trump and everyone who is advising Trump is not thinking about that, is not seeing that possible context and those possible consequences in terms of you cannot be that hostile to the future, because Africa as a whole is the future. The future consumer is in Africa. And so in as much as the complaint has been this wokeness that is being seen to come from, in particular, South Africa, that free speech that we've had has led to a youth that are able to express themselves, and because they're expressing themselves and expressing themselves so openly and honestly, that influence that we have in online spaces, the capital that has been kind of generated by South Africa in the Twitter streets, by South Africa in the TikTok streets, the cultural cachet that we have on the continent, and all of these things in terms of us being the USA of the continent, us being seen as big brother on the continent, us having led the continent into this BRICS alliance, and all of these very many things that kind of point to this idea that for South Africa and Africans and black people across the world, this is not just a meeting between two countries. However, that's not the context that Trump and any of his advisors are going to be giving him. They're going to say to him, you are dealing with one tiny little country at the tip of a continent, and I think that's where the setup is. It's one thing to humiliate a small country that's caught between the West and Russia in this never-ending conflict that it's in, which is the Ukraine. It's one thing to embarrass that guy, but to then take that a step further and embarrass a whole continent, to embarrass a leader of one of the most powerful economies and countries on that continent, and to basically show contempt for your future consumer. Because at the end of the day, America is going to need to export and continue to export their culture. They're going to need to continue to export and manufacture consent on a global level. And so they're going to need legitimacy. And in as much as Rob Hertzhoff on Biz News feels that this is going to be a right rollicking of Ramaphosa and his team, and them being put in their place, and Trump standing for Western Christian and Judeo-Christian values and capitalism and the free market economy, all of those values that have kind of been the propaganda post-colonization, post-colonialism, this neo-colonial package. That's what's on trial. And I don't see Trump being able to salvage that situation and understand the moment for what it is. I think Trump is on a high. Trump is coming from a series of wins. He's off the back of an American becoming the Pope, and he's off the back of a tour in the Middle East, in the Islamic countries that South Africa has purportedly acted on behalf of, sponsored by, and brought these charges at the ICJ. Something that those countries are not willing to do. Those countries probably distanced themselves from during his visit. And so it becomes a case of, South Africa, you stand alone as my enemy, and so you have no one in your corner, and I am then going to do even worse than I did to Zelensky. I think that's how Trump is coming into it. I think Rob Herzog is going to get what he wants if Trump is not aware of my preamble at the beginning, in terms of South Africa is located in a very unique and special place. And any embarrassment of South Africa is going to have reverb on the rest of the continent and among the diaspora, and it's going to speak volumes to the Caribbean, it's going to speak volumes to the Afro people that are in Europe, and anywhere in the world, basically. It's going to let us know that not only are we entering a new world order, so to speak, of strongman politics, but we are then also getting into a space where white supremacy gets global franchise. And now it's out in the open that we are dealing with white supremacy as a whole, and it's acting in coordinated manner against Africa and people that are not white. However, your proximity to whiteness then allows you to seem like you're going to be able to continue and survive in this current moment. So your Middle East, where there's some level of very light-skinned Arabs who may pass as white, the fabulous wealth that's available to the people in that region, and that proximity to whiteness allowing them to assimilate into this Western Christeo-Judaic value system that incentivizes our centrality of capitalism, as an example, or the centrality of these Western democratic values. Even though democracies generally are on the way out and the strong man is coming much stronger, and Trump has been a very big part of bringing that case in point, in terms of him being elected the first time around without the popular vote, and then him being elected this time around with a lower voter turnout and much fewer votes having been cast. That kind of tells you that the democracy is not as healthy, and so the result there has to be kind of with that asterisk, an asterisk that they won't agree with, because I'm another one of these woke mind virus South African black youth that are considered public enemy number one. And so if we're considered public enemy number one, sanctioning us and removing Western technology and removing us from the global conversation might seem like the right thing to do. And Trump seems like the kind of person who might do that. And if, let's say, to quote Rob Herzog, South Africa does become Sodom and Gomorrah and we are completely wiped off the map, even if it's not literally with bombs and carpet bombed out of existence, but if it was to be a case of heavily sanctioned, we become the new Zimbabwe and we're meant to learn this lesson and we're going to be squeezed out of the global conversation, squeezed out of any power and any influence. Our teams not being allowed to travel, because I mean, right now South Africa is winning gold medals across multiple disciplines. We are at the top of sports in terms of soccer. All our teams are currently at the top in terms of the continent. They're at the top in terms of being in line to qualify for World Cups. If you look at our hockey teams, we have both the men and women winning gold, and we have on the athletics field recently embarrassed the United States by winning the 4x4, the 4x400 and the 4x100. These are very American things that now we are kind of entering into that territory, and we are touching them on their studio. And so in that context, it could make sense to try and silence South Africa. It could make sense to remove South African youth from the internet, purge them from TikTok, purge them from Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, purge them from YouTube, purge people from the content creation as employment kind of pipeline. Those are things that those are levers that Trump can pull. So recently people have been talking about how TikTok is allowing us to start monetizing content in South Africa. That can still go away, and it can be like a little dangling fruit that Trump can use to be like, look, your youth are unemployed, and if I pull these things, the little bit of economic activity that they're able to generate goes away. And this little bit of clout that you're able to have on the global stage, these mics and stages you're able to garner through this Amapiano music, which has dethroned hip-hop, and all of these things are kind of showing this challenge that South Africa represents to the United States. I mean, Rob touches on something where he speaks to the idea of America only being willing, or I think the solution that he recommended to Trump and his delegation, however he was able to contact them. I don't understand how this person still has a South African citizenship and how he's welcomed back into our country after saying such things is possible, is all very miraculous and interesting. And yeah, it's just going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays itself out. But the idea being that you carpet bomb South Africa and you save the Western Cape, that you carpet bomb or sanction anyone that has anything to do with EFF, MK, ANC, so basically anyone black, and you then only interact with South Africa through the proxy that is the DA and through the proxy that is the Western Cape. So basically we are in colonization 2.0. So neo-colonization didn't work, and they're going back to what they know, back to making America great again, making the West great again, making people who have white skin feel as empowered, as superior, as these bastions of humanity, and everyone else expressing humanity outside of that as other, therefore less than. This is a direction Trump could go in, and based on the balance of forces in the world right now, it's very curious to see who is going to be able to stand up to this man. Because as I kind of hinted in the last video, Ibrahim Traore is a strong man. He's not democratically elected. He doesn't have the Western values, Christo-Judaic authority placed upon him. And so that person being then kept safe by a Putin could be Putin's way of then reorganizing how global loyalties lie. If Trump does carpet bomb South Africa and sanctions anyone with black skin and prevents the voice of the South Africans ever getting out, then Ibrahim Traore becomes the African voice. Ibrahim Traore then becomes the big black hope. And if that happens and Putin is in charge of that, that's going to then be very interesting in terms of how things play themselves out. Because you are dealing with a different generation with Traore. You are dealing with the old guard. If you are going to embarrass Ramaphosa in public and you're going to then sanction him and announce all the carpet bombing that you're planning to do on South Africa for what they've chosen as their stance in terms of Gaza and the censure that they've chosen to try and put on the Israel, the Israeli state, in terms of what they've done in the Gaza Strip and the genocide and forced removal of people and the constant prisoner of war type conditions that people are living under, which are in contravention of many and probably most of the human rights conventions and things like that. So, with all of that said, it's on a knife edge and the whole world will be watching. And I do see these three kind of main paths. Path one, Trump shocks all of us, myself included, and is a reasonable person who understands that force can't win you everything, that you're going to have to manufacture some consent, you're going to have to seem like you're conceding, you're going to have to speak respectfully to these former colonies and not double down and continue down the path that Macron has been on, because Macron has definitely been this colonizer who is shocked at the ungrateful nature of these colonized people and how you've basically developed their countries for them and they're not even paying you back, they're not even saying thank you. So I see that as the shocking thing, because if Trump is going to go down the path of saying, you know what, let's just try and understand the humanity of these black people, then yeah, I'm going to be shocked. I'm not ready for that scenario. That human beings, that black people get to become human beings, black people stop being 3/5, black people stop being niggers, black people stop being the butt of everyone's supremacist jokes, black people then become franchised. That's the most shocking outcome in this whole thing, that Africa is going to be allowed to develop and on our own terms, or at least with a seat at the table. That's going to be very interesting. I don't foresee Trump being the one to announce Security Council seats, as an example. I don't see him having the personality to magnanimously say he won and conceded. I don't, because it will definitely be concession, particularly to his base, because his base are the most toxic, virulent white supremacists, the unapologetic white supremacists, the people that are like, you know what, our ancestors invested so much in this thing that we can't let it go. We can't find something better, and in fact, matter of factly, we're just too lazy and are not interested in finding anything better. We're not willing to explore it, we're not willing to discuss it, we're not willing to do anything. We insist upon you assimilating to us, or you will then continue to be slaves, because we will beat you into submission and you will accept whatever terms and conditions we put on the table. And so that takes us back, time travel back. This is what I think is more likely, that Trump wants to renew the white supremacist spell that was cast by Merlin. And so that's scenario 2. That white supremacy is back, colonization is back, and basically there is no such thing as rights for anyone with black skin, and there is no such thing as correction or censure for anyone with white skin, and white supremacy, white privilege, all of these things become not phenomenon that we can study and dismantle, but become real and become unquestionable dogma that must continue into perpetuity. And the white race gets to continue down this path of insisting that violence is their only way of survival, that their population will be decimated if everyone gets along, and so they need global apartheid. That's scenario 2, which I think is far more likely, because I don't see Trump having it in him to rise above the petty. I don't see him having it in him to basically go against his base, right? His base want an Africa that is below them, an Africa that is beneath them, an Africa that sends the riches to them and continues to worship them at the. It's like a double fuck in the mind, right? A double mind fuck, I guess, in terms of you are on the one hand giving your wealth to these people, which therefore puts them on a pedestal. So you put them on the pedestal and then you worship them for being on the pedestal. This is the logic that kind of has ruled the African continent for some time, and this is what we are breaking by having global conversations, by South Africans being as vocal as they have been in terms of dissecting, breaking down, and being these spreaders of wokeness, because we've realized that change doesn't come all at once, but also change is not going to come from the generations that are older. And so this Trump-Ramaphosa conversation is a generational conversation, and that's why the outcome seems more likely that Trump is going to think this is 40, 60, 80 years ago, and he's going to try and do 40, 60, 80 years ago type things, using latest weapons and technology, of course, but he's going to basically try and bomb all black people out of existence. Then the middle road. The middle road is probably where we will land up. I probably would prefer either extreme because there's more clarity there, but we're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle where we're going to have a hodgepodge in-between type solution, where on the one hand, Trump is going to do exactly some of the things that Rob Herzog has said in terms of sanctioning everyone or anyone that has anything to do with the ANC, sanctioning anyone and everyone that has anything to do with the MK, and use propaganda to basically say that these are parties that are funded by communists in either a China, a Russia, whatever the case may be, and use that to justify sanctioning those individuals and coming up with a very long list, and possibly anyone who has any ties to the Muslim world and anyone who has any ties to someone like the person of Naledi Pandor. That kind of, like, let's call them a Naledi Pandor package of sanctions, which is very similar to what they probably tried to do against the Russian oligarchs, so to speak, which, I mean, Gold Mafia has shown us that you can skirt around all of these things and it will all be fine. But we will suffer, and so it will be a middle ground type solution, because these people are so rich and they've probably already offshored enough of their wealth to be able to continue in the lavish lives that they're living, right? That's one of the middle ground type solutions. Another middle ground type solution, which is also coming from Rob's video, and I like the idea, and I think it's possible that America and American companies on South African soil are going to completely ignore local rules and be the bastions of racism, which is okay. And I think they should totally try that out. I do think that they should hire all the white people that they want and try and find out how many black customers they get, because that's going to be the battleground of, are we woke or do we just do it online because it's convenient? So that test is going to be an interesting test. So I do think something about American companies either pulling out to punish and create more unemployment, but why do that when all you're doing is just creating a vacuum that someone else can fill and allow actual development? So I don't see those companies going anywhere. I think the middle ground is going to be that if you're an American company and you're under a certain size, you can ignore labor laws. Or if you're in the Western Cape, you can ignore labor laws. I don't know, but I think that's going to be some kind of middle ground type situation. And so we're going to see a lot of American companies that are in Johannesburg, a lot of American companies that are anywhere else in the country, moving very aggressively into the Western Cape and using Western Cape law to overrule, skirt around national law. That could be one of these middle ground type hodgepodge situations. In terms of Starlink, I don't know what I expect to happen around Starlink, but I do think something is going to happen, something is going to break. And that's particularly important because, in as much as America can try and turn the tide on this woke wave that's coming at them and unwokify the black youth of South Africa and Africa as a whole. So Starlink becomes very important for that because those rules, community rules and guidelines are going to become key. And any white tears will lead to your comments being taken down, your content being taken down, you being blocked, you being stopped, and there will be no counter argument. There are already videos now on TikTok where people say that if you look a certain way and you use a slur, that slur triggers certain behaviors and actions in terms of your content gets slowed down or that content gets flagged, you get suspended or you get some kind of strike on you. However, if that behavior is same exact behavior is done by people with different hue than you, then that is okay. And so basically it's going to empower the trolls. We're going to have a Cambridge Analytica that basically is going to cleanse the internet of wokeness, cleanse the internet, biasedly so. So we're going to have the apartheid police as these bots and agents online. These bot farms are going to be designed to cleanse the internet of blackness, to cleanse the internet of wokeness, to cleanse the internet of any broader reading of history and the narrative as a whole. Then we're going to have a kind of middle ground type situation in terms of imports and exports. I do think that there's going to be some kind of legalization of the ocean, Western Cape, fracking, drilling, drill, something. There's going to be something that's going to happen in the shores of the Western Cape in terms of the oil that was discovered, whether that's going to be deep sea drilling, something. They're going to ignore all regulations, they're going to ignore all bio ecosystems and all of that, and they're going to get the rights to the oil over there. Or some combination of minerals that are going to be kind of earmarked for American use in some way. I don't know how that's going to all happen, but possibly that whole platinum belt and the Northwest as a whole is going to now be producing particularly for a US or Western market in mind. And so those deals are going to be designed to lock out BRICS. Those deals are going to be designed to lock out China, to lock out Russia, and establish South Africa as fully this American colony. And possibly there's going to be 1 or 3 military bases that are going to come with that. No one's going to say anything, it won't be announced. It'll be a lived reality for the people in that local community that, yeah, no, those are Americans over there. I do think that there's going to be heavy collaboration in terms of law enforcement. I do think that either the FBI, the CIA, some intelligence, whatever, are going to get closer to the ground in terms of being in South Africa and by being on the ground trying to turn this narrative, trying to turn the tide and continue a wave of American content being the central thing. It's going to be interesting to see how that dance is going to happen. And yeah, I don't know how this is all going to work. But I do see a compromise being what's reasonable, being what's most likely. What's less likely is scorched earth policy by Trump, and what's completely outside of the realm of possibility is Trump making peace, Trump choosing maturity, Trump choosing the high road, and basically passing the baton gently to say, you know what, we used to be the land of the free, but you guys have a day called Freedom Day, we like that, so here you are, South Africa, you guys take the torch, you guys have that G20 conversation, you guys steer the world into a future that doesn't center us as the United States. I don't see that as being remotely possible in this realm or in any parallel universes. So yeah, I give that a probability of negative infinite. I don't know. Like, it's just outside of the realm of possibility in my mind. And so, in as much as I did a video earlier, I've posted this video earlier, I genuinely did think that the election of a pope, the Trump visits in the Middle East, this is a wave of Trump getting his way. And generally when people are in a manic mode, you look at Ye as an example, when you're on a winning streak, you get worse. You generally don't find people winning and then tempering themselves. So right now, Trump is probably very high on fumes, and those fumes are about to become dragon fire on our poor president, who is, to be fair, like, I've not really had a lot of faith in Cupcake. I really haven't, and that's because I don't think that he is what South Africa needs in this moment, what South Africa is in terms of what South Africa represents. I do think that he is a continuation of whatever was going on in Codesa. He is a continuation of allowing whiteness to show itself and deal with them with kid gloves, because there's nothing we're doing about the hugely overinvested JSC, and yet we have huge unemployment. There's nothing we're doing about our inequality, and we don't seem to have any plans to do anything about it, because that's exactly what Trump and the Judeo-Christian values want. They want to be so far above you that the laws that apply to you don't apply to them. But you must then obey those laws. You must maintain that hierarchy. You must continue down the path, and they'll sell you and gaslight you into thinking that you can join them up there if you comply your way there, and yet the only way they got there was by subverting all those rules and then utilizing the privilege in them subverting those rules and getting away with it in a way that you could never do. Because like I'm saying to you, that this purge of wokeness and blackness is either going to continue, and if it's going to continue, merit is not going to be part of the conversation. It's going to be purely about who are you and what are you saying. If we agree with who you are, then we will check if we agree with what you're saying. And that's what's going to be pushed going forward. These are the narratives that are going to make it into people's eyeballs, because they control the algorithm of YouTube, they control the algorithm of TikTok, they control the algorithm of Twitter, they control pretty much all social media. And yeah, I don't even know how we allowed ourselves to be stuck in these monopolies, because these monopolies then become competitive advantage for the countries that they're in. And it's going to be interesting to see how the person that was credited with this meeting happening, according to an article by Rudy Hlabi, there's some back channel kind of discussions that are happening, and Mr. Remgro, Johan Rupert, allegedly, according to this article, is a key factor and is going to be part of the delegation. So if that is true, because I mean, Rudy Hlabi is a very well-known, respected voice, and so I have every reason to believe that her journalism is good, sound, and meets the things. I'm just hedging because I don't know, right? It's not a fact coming from my mouth. I am reading something that came from him. If Mr. Remgro himself is involved in this whole thing, it's going to be interesting to see how his engagement through this 10-cent kind of China discussion, and how China was able to receive him, and how China was able to swallow the capitalism that he's offering. I think that's going to be a key factor in this whole thing, in terms of, is China the negative player in this equation, or is the negativity purely coming from the blacks? And I think that's another reason why I'm tilting away from this idea of peace and towards this idea of war, towards this idea of purging blackness, purging wokeness, because they're going to say, look, we're able to get along with China. I was able to make money in China. I'm able to partner, and there's this big entity called Tencent, which I actually make more money in China than I make in South Africa now. A lot of these things can be fact checked, guys. There's Google and internet resources available to you. Go to more reliable podcasts. I do what I do. Yeah, I guess I should read the community guidelines. I'm gonna stop here because I feel like I'm now going off the rails and I've made my point.